State of mankind. How much do you know? Excerpts from How the Spectre of Communism is Ruling Our World. 67. Pornographic Sex Education. Traditionally in both the East and the West, sex has been a taboo topic in public. According to both traditions, the divine established that sexual conduct must take place only within marriage. All other forms of sexual conduct are considered promiscuous and sinful, violating the divine standards of morality. This makes sex and marriage inseparable, and sex can't be a matter of public discussion in a properly functioning society. In traditional society, the youth received only education in physiology, and there was no need for today's sex education. The modern concept of sex education was first introduced by Georg Lukács, founder of the Frankfurt School of Social Theory and Philosophy. His purpose was to completely overturn traditional Western values. In 1919, Lukács was the People's Commissar for Education and Culture in the brief Hungarian Bolshevik regime. He developed a radical sex education program that taught students free love, sexual intercourse and how outdated marriage was. The sexual revolution of the 1960s annihilated these traditional Western values. Sexually transmitted diseases and teen pregnancy began to rise rapidly. In these circumstances, those who wanted to solve such social problems promoted sex education. But in the education system that had already deviated from traditional moral teachings, sex education instead emphasized safety, preventing disease and pregnancy, and was disconnected from marriage, thus following the Lukács model of sex education by ignoring all moral aspects of sex. This form of education then became a tool for destroying youth. They were also exposed to the extramarital, promiscuous conduct of homosexuality, thus normalizing such behavior. The result of all this has been that the younger generation indulges in what they think is freedom, but what is in reality a path that turns away from divinely ordained standards. This sort of sex education from elementary school onward has already destroyed the traditional values of family, individual responsibility, love, chastity, a sense of shame, self-control, loyalty, and more. John Dewey's learning by doing form of progressive education is a convenient tool for Marxists. The sex education program focus on kids, widely promoted by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, recommends that teachers organize students to compete in a condom race. Each student must put a condom on an adult sex toy and then take it off. Whoever finishes fastest wins. Be Proud. Be Responsible is another sex education program endorsed by the CDC and promoted by Planned Parenthood and other educational organizations. The program requires students to role-play, for instance, two female students discussing safer sex. Student-centered instruction is another idea from progressivism. In this program, the teacher is instructed to ask students to brainstorm questions of intimacy with sexual partners. To the majority of people who still have traditional values in their hearts, it is difficult to distinguish this supposed education from child pornography. The main proponent of the program, Planned Parenthood, is the biggest provider of sex education and books in the United States. It has branches in 12 countries. It also promotes abortion rights. The group was formerly known as the American Birth Control League. Its founder, Margaret Sanger, was a progressive socialist who worshipped Stalin's Russia and traveled there to pay her respects. She was also a strong proponent of the sexual liberation movement. She is on record as saying that extramarital affairs really set me free. She holds the idea that females have the right to become single mothers, and even wrote to her 16-year-old granddaughter about sexual intercourse, saying 3 times a day was about right. She established the Birth Control League because her promiscuous lifestyle required it. In the modern sex education courses created by this organization, it is not difficult to see that sexual liberation finds its origins in communism. Perfectly Normal is a sex education textbook that has been translated into 30 different languages and has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. The book used close to 100 cartoons of nudes to describe various normal and abnormal movements, feelings, and physical sensations of masturbation between opposite sexes and homosexuals, as well as birth control methods and abortion. The author claimed that children have the right to know all such information. The main theme of the book is that this variety of sexual behavior is all normal, and that none should be subject to moral judgment. In a widely used high school sex education textbook, the author tells children that some religions believe that sex outside of marriage is sinful and says, "You will have to decide for yourself how important these messages are for you. To summarize in one sentence, this worldview basically says that all values are relative, and right or wrong is for children to decide for themselves. Today's American public schools have two basic types of sex education classes. One type that's strongly promoted by educational organizations was described earlier, the complete sex education curriculum, which includes education on sexual behavior, birth control, prevention of sexually transmitted diseases, and the like. The other type teaches young people to control their sexual desire, does not discuss birth control, and encourages the delay of sexual behavior until after marriage. It is undeniable that social morality, especially general attitudes toward sex, have in general deviated far from traditional, faith-based morality. The media and the internet are flooded with pornographic content, all of which drags children toward the edge of the abyss. In today's educational field controlled by atheism, most public schools that follow value neutrality don't want or don't dare to teach children that sex outside of marriage is disgraceful and immoral, nor do they teach children right from wrong based on traditional moral principles. Sexual education is still a hot topic in society today. There are numerous arguments in different sectors of society around the issue of safety in sexual activity, which focuses on the teenage pregnancy rate and the rate of sexually transmitted diseases. However, the fact that schools are publicly teaching teenagers about sexual behavior will obviously increase sex outside of marriage, which violates traditional sexual morality. Even if there are no teen pregnancies or sexually transmitted diseases, does that mean everything is fine when teenagers are promiscuous? In Europe, where the sexual culture is even more lax than in the United States, the teenage pregnancy rate is half that of United States, due to effective sex education. Some people are delighted about this, while others are very worried. Regardless of these figures, with a decadent attitude toward sexual conduct in ascendance, communism will have achieved its goal of destroying human morality. From Chapter 12, Sabotaging Education.